Raos Academy, Hyderabad Branch. I am Swetha and today I am here to teach some of the most important science and technology PYQs. So, the first question of the day is, certain species of which one of the following organisms are well known as the cultivators of fungi? So, here it is greatly talking about the fungi cultivation. So, if you see, there is a particular symbiotic association, or we can also call it as the mutualism. That is, it is an association where both the involved species will going to get benefited through this particular association, and one such association will be seen between the ants and also in between the fungi, and also how and also which kinds of ants will going to participate in these kinds of symbiotic association. And the ants includes the leaf cutter ants. These leaf cutters are nothing but they are those ants which were going to cut the leaves and use those cut leaves as a feed to fungi. So, in such way the ants will provide the required biomass or required plant material to the fungi. At the same time, fungi will also helps the ants. So, in such way, through that of the symbiotic relationship or through that of mutualistic relationship, that is among the followings, it is the ants which were going to be greatly responsible for cultivating fungi, that means through feeding leaves to the fungi. So, it is the ants, and to be specifically leaf cutters. And the next one is, widespread resistance of malarial parasite to drugs like chloroquine has prompted attempts to develop a malarial vaccine to combat the malaria. So, why is it difficult to develop an effective malarial vaccine? First and foremost, if you see this, you have to understand greatly about this malarial disease, and again the causative organism which is responsible for causing this particular disease, and again the different kinds of hosts the causative organism of this particular malarial disease will use. So, here the causative organism is the Plasmodium parasite. It is a parasite, and there are different species of this particular Plasmodium will going to cause the malaria, and it includes the Plasmodium vivax, and again another species called Claviceps. So, it includes the Plasmodium species and also the Plasmodium parasites, and these Plasmodium parasites were greatly responsible for causing the malarial disease, and this particular parasite will use the different hosts for its living, and the first and also the definitive host of this Plasmodium parasite is the mosquito, then followed by a secondary host of this particular parasite is the human body, and in human body also particularly the liver cells and again the RBC cells. And why we are calling the mosquito as the definitive and also the primary host of this particular parasite and the humans as the secondary host? Because when compared to both of these hosts, first and foremost for its living, this Plasmodium, for its reproduction process, it promotes, it will make a sexual reproduction by using the mosquito, then followed by, firstly it will going to affect the mosquito where it will going to make the sexual reproduction. After that, that particular Plasmodium parasite will going to affect the humans, which is a secondary host, and especially in the liver and again the RBC cells, it will going to make a asexual reproduction. So, in such way this particular Plasmodium parasite which causes the malaria will going to affect and will going to use different kinds of hosts. And here the question is, recently we get to see that this particular parasite, that is the Plasmodium parasite, is showing resistance to an important drug of malarial disease, that is called the chloroquine. And how we can reduce that, and why don't we get an effective malarial vaccine for this particular parasite? It is because this particular parasite, that is the Plasmodium parasite, shows an important feature that is called the high mutation rate. That means it will going to mutate at a higher rate so that it will be difficult to control and to show the immunity against this particular parasite. Usually whenever a foreign agent enters into the blood or the body of a human body, then immediately the immunity system will going to recognize that foreign body and produces the antibodies and act against to that foreign particles. But if you see in this case, because of the Plasmodium parasite's ability of high mutation rate, it will be very difficult for the human immune system in order to show the complete immunity against this particular parasite. So that is the reason it is very difficult to make a vaccine or to make an effective complete vaccine against to this particular species because of its high mutation rate. So if you see the different statements, the reasons behind why we can't produce an effective malarial vaccine, it is because malaria is caused by several species of Plasmodium. It is a correct statement, but it is not the correct explanation for the given question. Then followed by man doesn't develop the immunity to malaria during the natural infection. It is a correct one. And how it is because of the high mutation rate of Plasmodium parasite. So option B is the correct statement. So consider the following statements. So first and foremost, here it is talking about an important disease that is called the hepatitis B. So if you see this particular disease hepatitis B, it is several times more infectious than HIV or AIDS. It is a correct statement. And how can you justify this particular statement? Then we have to make a comparison between the hepatitis B as well as that of the HIV or AIDS disease. So if you see here this hepatitis B and again the HIV AIDS, the mode of transmission, if we compare the mode of transmission between these two diseases, hepatitis B will be transmitted through blood or that of the blood infusion and through that of the sexual intercourse. And in the same way, you can also see the same modes of transmission in case of the HIV and AIDS also. But here the difference is this hepatitis B can live for about a long duration in the external environment or in the outer environment rather than in the body of a human. So it has the greater ability to live for longer periods outside the human body, whereas the HIV virus can't live for longer periods outside the human body. And also the small load or the small dose of viruses are enough in order to cause the hepatitis B disease, whereas in order to make a person to get affected by the AIDS, it requires the larger load or larger dose of HIV virus will be required in order to get affected with the HIV AIDS. So these two are the most important one, which shows the distinctive difference between the hepatitis B and again the HIV or AIDS disease. In case of the hepatitis B, it can live for about longer duration outside the human body and it requires a small load of virus is enough in order to get affected with the hepatitis B. In case of the HIV AIDS disease, this particular virus can't live for longer duration outside the human body and it requires a large, or you can see a greater amount of virus load will be required in order to get affected with the HIV or AIDS. And also, first and foremost, you have to understand this hepatitis B and what do you mean by the literal meaning of this hepatitis. This hepatitis, the literal meaning is the inflammation. And to which organ it causes the inflammation? It will cause the inflammation to liver. So because of this hepatitis, it will causes the inflammation to liver and make the liver to be very much vulnerable in order to get the liver cancer. So occurrence of this hepatitis B will be going to lead to that of getting a liver cancer. And how? It is because of this hepatitis B is going to cause the inflammation in the liver, which will make the liver to be very much vulnerable in order to get the liver cancer. So, in such way there is a greater possibility for those people who got affected with the hepatitis B, they will probably and greatly going to get the liver cancer as well. So, with regarding to this description, let us see the different statements. So, hepatitis B is several times more infectious than the HIV AIDS. It is a correct statement because of these two reasons, because this hepatitis B can live for about longer period outside the human body, and small dose of this particular virus is enough to get affected with the hepatitis B. So, option 1 is directly a correct statement, followed by hepatitis B can cause the liver cancer. It is also a directly correct statement. And how hepatitis B can lead to liver cancer? Because of the inflammation of the liver, it will make the liver completely vulnerable in order to get affected with the liver cancer. So, both 1 and 2 are the correct statements. So, option C is the correct statement. Followed by, in the context of Indian wildlife, the flying fox is. So, it is greatly talking about this particular species called the flying fox. And first and foremost, if we talk about this particular flying fox, we can say that this particular species has the ability to fly. So, from that we can say that these are aves, and also why we were calling it as the flying fox. This species were actually the bats, and these were called as that of the flying fox because the appearance of the face of these particular species will resemble to that of fox face. So, because of that, this particular species got the name called the flying fox, and these were the bats, and these bats being the bats, these were frugivorous in nature, that means which greatly feeds on the fruits and also promotes the pollination in different crops. So, this flying fox is a bat. So, option A is the correct statement. Followed by, with reference to the evolution of living organisms, which one of the following sequences are correct? So, before getting into the different statements, you have to understand what is the evolution of living organisms and how different living organisms got evolved with time. And first and foremost, if you see in the evolution in the past, we were having the invertebrates. These invertebrates includes the different organisms like insects, that means arthropods, and again the sponges, and the many different organisms were included in the invertebrates, and followed by the invertebrates there is another group which has been evolved, that is called the vertebrates. And what do you mean by this particular term, vertebrates and the invertebrates? And the simple difference between these two includes, these invertebrates doesn't consist of spinal cord, whereas through evolution these vertebrates have evolved and they have the spinal cord. So, that is the basic difference between the invertebrates and the vertebrates. They do not have the spinal cord, but the vertebrates do have the spinal cord, and the name itself also says the vertebrate. Here the term vertebrae refer to spinal cord. So, these were invertebrates, they do not have the vertebrate, these are the vertebrates, the organisms which have the vertebrates, and these includes the fishes, or we can say the pisces. Then followed by, from these fishes the amphibians have been evolved, from these amphibians reptiles were evolved, and from these reptiles aves were evolved, and from aves mammals were evolved. Here the fishes were those organisms which can live and also reproduce only in the waters. Then followed by, from those fishes the different other organisms which got evolved were the amphibians. These were the organisms which can live both in water and also on the land. And what were these amphibians includes? It includes the frogs, salamanders, and many different organisms were included in the amphibians. And after amphibians, from the amphibians the reptiles were evolved. And what were these reptiles were all about? That includes the snakes and also that of crocodiles, that means crocodiles and different organisms which have the scales on its body. So, best example for the reptiles includes snakes. From the reptiles, and also these reptiles can live only on the land, and so that we can say that these reptiles are the terrestrial organisms, and from these reptiles the aves were evolved, and these aves are nothing but the birds, and which were the egg laying, we all know. Then from the birds the mammals were evolved, and the mammals, why we were calling in the these particular group of animals as the mammals, because of the presence of the mammary glands. Because of that particular special feature of mammary glands, we will call them as the mammals. And also these mammals were those group of organisms which can give birth to a living young ones. They do not lay eggs, but they give directly a birth to the younger ones. So this is the evolution from fish to amphibians, amphibians to reptiles, reptiles to aves, and again from aves to mammals. So here it is asking about the sequence of different organisms in the evolutionary period. So here if we see the third option, it is the salamanders. Salamanders are amphibians. Where is the python? Python means it is a snake. Snakes were reptiles, then followed by kangaroos. Kangaroos were mammals, right? So in such way we can say that these were the salamander, these were the amphibians, from amphibians reptiles, from reptiles these were the mammals. So option C is the correct statement which gives the correct sequence of evolution of different organisms. Followed by the panda belongs to the same family as that of, first and foremost, if you see these pandas belongs to the family called Ursidae. These pandas belong to a family called the Ursidae, and this Ursidae includes the different species, which includes the bears, black bears, panda, and many other different organisms. And if you see these pandas includes the different types also, and to be specifically, this includes the giant pandas. Usually if you see the size of these particular organisms, many will assume these were the herbivores, but they are not herbivores. They were they were actually herbivores, but whenever people see their size, they will get to assume that they are carnivorous in nature, but they are completely 99% of these giant pandas were herbivores, and they greatly feed on the bamboos and again the bamboo sticks. So panda, which belongs to the family called the Ursidae and which includes the bears. So option A is the correct statement. Followed by the marine animal called dugong, which is vulnerable to the extinction, is which of the following type, that means which of the following kind of organism. So before getting into it, you have to understand the nature of these dugongs. These dugongs were the mammals, that means which have the ability to give birth to live younger ones, and also these dugongs will live, that means if you see the distribution of these dugongs will live in the shallow waters of Indo-Pacific Ocean. And also these dugongs were also called as the sea cow. And why this particular species got this name called the sea cow? This is because these dugongs were herbivores and they were greatly feed on the sea grasses. As we all know that the cows feeds on the grasses, in the same way as the dugong feeds on the sea grasses, this particular dugong species got this name called the sea cow. So among the following, it is the mammal. That is, dugong species are the mammals. So option D is the correct statement. Followed by, in which of the following kinds of organisms is the phenomenon found wherein the female kills the male after copulation? So here if you see, after mating or after copulation, in which of these following organisms the female is going to kill the male after copulation? So if you see all these one by one, if you see in case of the dragonfly, first and foremost, if you see this particular phenomenon of killing the male after the copulation, we will call it as the sexual cannibalism. And it is the name of this particular phenomenon called the sexual cannibalism. That means it is the phenomenon where the female will kill the male after copulation or after mating. So if you analyze the each and every species, first and foremost in case of the dragonfly, dragonflies do not, the females do not going to kill the males, and after the copulation they will separate and they see their own way, and you do not see the sexual cannibalism in case of the dragonfly. If you see in case of the honeybee, and we all know the female is definitely the queen bee will crossed with the male, and the male is going to be the drone. And in case of the honeybees, after the copulation the male is going to die. It is not because that the queen bee is going to kill the male in case of honeybees. The male in case of honeybees will going to die. It is because during the process of copulation or during the process of mating, the genitals of the males will going to rip off during that process. So because of ripping off the genitals during the copulation process, the males will going to die in case of the honeybees, but it is not because of the queen will going to kill the male. So in that case honeybees are also an incorrect one. Though the male will going to die after the copulation, it is not the female that going to kill the male. So it is not the honeybees. If you see in case of the spiders, it is a correct one, that is the female will going to kill the males after the copulation. You will get to see this particular sexual cannibalism in case of the spiders. So C is the correct statement. So spiders is the correct statement. Then followed by, if you analyze the last statement, that is the pit viper. And what was this pit viper? It is a snake, and in case of this pit viper also, after the copulation both the male and female will going to separate and they go by their own way, but there is no such kind of sexual cannibalism will be observed in the pit vipers. So here among all the species, it is the spiders which will show this phenomenon called the sexual cannibalism. Then followed by, for which one of the following snakes the diet mainly composed of the other snakes? Here it is talking about the cannibalism. And what do you mean by this particular term cannibalism refer to? Here a particular organism, it will going to kill the same species. That means it will going to the species, its own species for as its diet. Here the cannibalism is the phenomenon. Here it is asking that in which of the following snake species you will get to see this particular cannibalism phenomenon. So from the among the given species, it is the king cobra. King cobra will shows the ability of cannibalism, where the king cobra will feed on the different other snake species, which includes the Russell's viper and also the krait. And at times the king cobra will feed on other cobras and it will fulfill its nutritional requirements. So in such way the king cobra will shows the behavior of cannibalism and feeds on the other snakes. So option D is the correct statement. Then followed by, what is the pH level of blood of a normal person? If you see the pH of the person, it will be slightly alkaline in nature. Everyone knows that 6 to 7 or up to 7, that means for example 7 is the pH and below the 7 is called the acidic in nature, and above 7 it will be the basic or alkaline in nature. If you see accordingly, the pH of the blood will be between 7.35 to 7.45, that means the pH of the blood shows a slightly alkaline in nature. For example, if the pH of the blood will go less than that of this 7.35, then that kind of condition is called the acidicose, whereas greater than that of 7.5, we will call it as alkisol. So in such way, if whenever the pH will going to change, that is which will become less than that of this range, will be a problem, and also greater than that of this particular pH will also cause the problem. So it is very important to maintain the pH balance in the human body. So here it is the 7.35 to 7.45, which is the pH level of blood. Then followed by, it is an assertion reason question. So here the assertion is, in human body, liver has important role in fat digestion. So in this context, let me give you a brief background with regarding to nature of liver and how the fat digestion actually works in the liver. So if you see in the human body, there were three important parts, one being that of liver and the other one being the gallbladder and the other one being the pancreas. These three were the most important organs which were present in our human body, and the gallbladder is responsible for secreting the bile. This bile will be responsible for the emulsification of fats, and the bile which will be secreted by the gallbladder will enters into the liver, whereas in liver this bile acts on the fats and also emulsifies or the neutralizes the fats present in the liver. So in such way fats will be digested within the liver due to the action of bile juice, and also the fats will also get digested by an enzyme called the lipase. The lipase enzyme will be produced by the pancreas, but these lipase which were produced in the pancreas will going to act on the fats and causes the fat digestion. So that means in case of that it is the triglycerides which were called the fats. Due to the action of lipase on these triglycerides will lead to the production of glucose and again the fatty acids. So in such way the lipase will greatly plays a pivotal role in the digestion of the fats. But where this lipase actually produced from, these lipase will be produced in the pancreas but not in the liver, and also bile will produce from the gallbladder but not from the liver. But these substances which were produced from these other organs will act on the fat in the liver, where the actual fat digestion will takes place. So here if you see in the human body, liver has important role in the fat digestion, which is a directly a correct statement, followed by liver produces two important fat digestion enzymes. Which is an incorrect one. The two important fat digesting enzymes which includes the bile and again the lipase, which were produced by the gallbladder and again the pancreas respectively, but these were not produced in the liver. So reason will going to be an incorrect one. So only assertion is true but the reason is false. So option C is the correct statement. I think the lecture is informative. Thank you.